So just go.
Hey, honeys and hunks. New episode this week. It's the beginning of the playoffs. It's one of my favorite times of the year. Jade, how about you? Are you excited for this?
I mean, it's the first time all season I've really been engaged in basketball, honestly. Like, it was just such a hard season for the Raptors. So, yeah, it's nice to have some basketball to be excited about.
This is, like I said, literally one of my favorite times of the year because it's just, especially right now, first round, there's
All
basketball
basketball, all the
constantly.
time.
Like, we
Yeah.
got a game in a half hour. So, honeys and hunks, we might have a short episode for you guys today just because we want to watch some playoff basketball. But before we do get started, don't forget to follow us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Hardcourt Hunnies and on Twitter at HC Hunnies. This week we're going to be talking all about the playoffs. We're going to be going through the first round series, breaking them down. Now that the teams have had at least one game in, we can kind of see things that the teams may have to work on or worries that they should have we're going to just dive into that. But we're going to start off with the West Conference right now. And we're going to be going to this 1-8 matchup with the Grizzlies and the Jazz. Jade, will Mitchell being back, because he's back tonight or next game, will him being back be that big of a difference?
I mean, it better be that big of a difference. It needs to be that big of a difference. I did FN Sports with Chaka and Parker over the weekend, and one of the questions we talked about was who is the biggest fraud left in the playoffs, and I think it was Parker picked the Jazz. And I have a hard time with that. I have a hard time when we talk all the time about how hard it is to get the 1 seed in the Western Conference. I feel like the Jazz are getting some hate that they don't completely deserve in terms of their performance because, listen, they locked in the 1 seed in the Western Conference. We talk every year about how hard that is. Like, we got to give them their props for that. Whether or not they can do it in the playoffs is always another question. I think Mitchell is, I don't think, this is obvious. This is not groundbreaking, but Mitchell is crucial for their success. And I like that how vocal he's been about how he wanted to play. I'm glad to hear that that's the case.
I think, they already have 3 other players on that team that can score 20 points any given night. They got Jordan Clarkson, which shout out to him, just winning 6th man of the year. He's on my fantasy team, so he's been helping me out. Bogdanovich, he can go off any night, and Connolly too. So That's why is having Mitchell going to be that crucial when you still already have the scorers that they have?
I think about a team like the Raptors, and we've got players that can put up points too, Freddie and Pascal and, OG, a few other guys that can put up the points. But when Kyle Lowry plays, it is a different team. And so there are those guys, and not every team has those guys. Some teams, whoever's out, they'll find a way. But there are some teams that, even outside of the points, some players bring something that is necessary for the team's performance. And I think Mitchell might be one of those guys for Utah right now.
All right, so now we got the Utah. Now we're going to flip over to Memphis. So they're running on this complete high of them just getting through the play-in tournament and stuff like that, playing some really heartfelt basketball right now. But they've been having some new players every night coming in, stepping up for it. Who on Memphis right now, Jade, needs to play borderline perfect to keep momentum going? Are we going to Morant? Do we see Valanciunas step up because he's got that experience with it? Dylan Brooks has been doing phenomenal with it, or is it someone else, Jarrett Jackson Jr.?
So I think I'll address a couple of the guys you said. I think JV is JV. You get out of him what you're going to get, which is average a double-double basically most of the time. I think as long as he keeps doing that, they're going to be okay. And there aren't a lot of teams that defend a big man that's a little bit more traditional. JV is a little bit more of a traditional big man. Kind of that the last era of them I think we're going to see in the NBA.
I call him the poor man's Vucevic.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think if he does that, I think, I mean, Ja Morant has to keep being Ja Morant. And I don't think that's a question of whether or not he will be. Like, I watched that first game, and I haven't had a chance to see him play a ton because I don't get a lot of Grizzlies games. But, like, you watch Ja Morant on that court, and he knows he belongs there. And you can tell he's not trying to convince himself. You know, like with some players, I feel like the bravado and the strut is them trying to convince themselves that they belong there. His is 100% legit. He knows who he is. He knows what he's capable of. And I think that about him is to the point where it's even unshakable. Like, even if he's having a bad game or a bad series or the team's having a rough night, I think he is so confident that he belongs out there that, I mean, you know, I think this is the first of a bunch of playoff appearances for the Grizzlies over the next few years. Go ahead.
Oh, if they can stay healthy with it too.
Yeah.
They've had Jarrett Jackson Jr. is one of their core pieces, and he's been out for like the entire year. So they're doing this well without him being in. Yeah. And Dylan Brooks is going to be the next premier 3-and-D guy. He's going to be the next premier 3-D guy. So they got things set up for it. All right, so the next matchup, 2 versus 7, Suns versus Lakers. I really wish we didn't have to, but we always have to talk about them.
We have to talk about them.
So we're just gonna get to the Lakers, just get them right out of the way. Do Lakers have the overall team to compete? Yes, they have the 2 best players on the court, but when those 2 players sit down, I mean, Drummond can rebound, but like,
it's a problem. It's a problem, and I mean, Anthony Davis played game 1. He didn't play it very well, but he played.
Hey-o.
Hey. Sorry, you know how that Wi-Fi is, and it started raining again, so I'm hoping that it.
Oh no.
So we will see.
All right. Well, you haven't missed much. We just talked about the first round series or the Jazz Grizzlies. Right now, I just asked Jade this. Were you done with your thought, Jade?
Yeah, I mean, they need them both to play really well. And neither of them are playing really well.
Mm-hmm.
They need them both. I mean, their backup guys are Kyle Kuzma and, like, you know, LeBron. Like, that team is not deep enough to make it happen if both LeBron and AD are not playing as well as they can. And we've already seen that beginning of struggles with AD. His game 1 he did not have a good game. He shot terribly in the first half. And I was cooking while that game was on. I had the game streaming on my laptop. And I took the Suns in this series because I wanted to make one really gutsy, if unlikely, pick that I think I can make up the points against my boyfriend Patrick later in the series, later on in the playoffs. And I came out of the play-in tournament 2 up on him. So I had a little bit of space. So I'm like, I think it's possible that the Lakers falter here. And he's like, well, has LeBron ever gone out of the playoffs in the first round? So I looked it up, and sure enough, no, he hasn't. I said, but he missed the playoffs in 18-19. So if he can miss the playoffs, he can go out in the first round. And if AD doesn't get it together, I don't think it's inconceivable. I don't think it's inconceivable based on the Suns' upward trajectory and the Lakers' inconsistent play, especially of late, that the Suns could take them out.
Just showing me also that Anthony Davis, as great as he is not a number 1 for me.
Well, that's the thing. Like, he's, supposedly one of the top 10 guys in the league. Fine. I'll give him that. But it's seeming to be apparent that he's not that guy. He doesn't have that thing where he says, I'm not letting my team lose. And that's what it's becoming apparent to me that he doesn't have that.
So Shay, so Booker had a really great showing the first one. This is his first playoff performance. Are we going to be still seeing the Booker show for the rest of the playoffs, or was that just a little bit like just beginning jitters and just letting him go?
No, I really think that he's going to keep this stamina up. I mean, again, this might be the first time that we're seeing the specific Phoenix team in the playoffs. But you do have that veteran presence of Chris Paul. Then they've built that relationship throughout the year. And added on top, the fact that you have two of the Laker players, two of the biggest names in the league right now who are struggling, that's got to be a nice little motivation for you to have this like moment, right? Your first playoffs, your first time that the Suns have been in the playoffs since when? I mean, and especially with this group, I mean, it's really got to be such a good moment for him mentally, as well as having the support of his team the way that he does. So I don't know, like I have a really good feeling that we're going to continue to see a really strong Devin Booker, even if he has a little bit of an off. At this point, it's like he's already shown us what his ability is, and I really don't see it like going down too much.
I'm curious what we're going to see out of DeAndre Ayton for his also first playoff series. Who that's another guy, Jade, that is similar to Valanciunas.
Yeah.
And hopefully the Suns use him right with that. So I'm going to switch into this Nuggets Trailblazers. First question about the Nuggets, I'm going to swing over to you, Shay, since it involves Murray. Can the Nuggets, even though they're the third seed, can they pull this off without your boy Jamal Murray?
Look, if you had asked me before that first game, I would have been like, heck yeah, they've been rocking it since his injury. He was already not performing well. All of the things that we've talked about for weeks on weeks on weeks. The performance in that first game, though, it just shows the difference between where the Blazers are at and where the Nuggets are at. I mean, it was a really tough competition and it could have easily gone either way, but not having that backup of one star who has gone to the division finals, like I think that that's really, really putting a damper on their play. When you have someone like Damian Lillard, who, when he's on and he has had some really great, especially first round playoff games, in the past, it's hard to compete with that when you're missing such a vital link to your playoffs strategy. I do know that his presence there, like he is physically there at the game, so that's cool. But like that's not going to be the same energy than like when Jamal Murray is hitting his points, when he's able to kind of maneuver his way past that defense right into his layups. That's a whole different energy that helps if anyone else on the team is kind of having a damper. And we've talked about since the beginning of the season that the Nuggets they don't really have that backup player when Jokic and Murray, who is now not playing, they're lacking in a little bit of their second and third string people that can come in. So it's going to be a toss-up. I mean, I'm not going to say that they can't pull it off. I just think that it's going to be a lot more of a hurdle for them than they initially thought it would be.
Oh, they've been doing well without him. Besides that first loss, but still, playoff basketball is a whole other thing.
It's a whole different
thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing, and especially with someone like Jamal Murray, like he's one of those guys. The brighter the lights, the better he plays.
Yeah,
and I think they're going to miss that down the stretch. I mean, yeah, they came out in one game too, but they can't count on Jokic to go 15 for 20 and get 38 points every game.
Exactly. Jokic is probably tired after last night. I mean, it's like he can't do that for the next couple of games and then go into round 2 and carry them then as well. While the Blazers have that supporting team for Damian Lillard. It's a different, I mean, again, it could, especially because the series is tied right now, it's a toss-up, but I'm doubting it a little less after that first game.
I took the Blazers in that series, so that'll be an interesting one for me.
Well, I want Nuggets all the way, but again, like I don't think that was a good choice.
Finally, we have conflict between these two. Finally, oh my word. Well, speaking of Portland, and Jade, you having them winning it, does Damian Lillard need to put the Blazers on his back and just take over for them to even have a chance in this series?
I mean, I think that's kind of the structure of the Blazers, period. Like you ain't got Dame and it's not that they don't have individually great players. They do. They've got great players. But something about, I don't know if it's the other guys or if it's Dame. I think it's Dame. I think sometimes when you have a person who has the kind of presence that he has, and again, he's another one of those guys, like the more dire the straits are, the more incredible a performance he seems to be able to dig up. And it's getting to the point where it's like, I don't know how much I can bet against that. Like, he decimated my playoff bracket 2 years ago. My bracket was perfect except for the series that the Trailblazers were in, because they kept winning series they should have won. And they're a couple years older than that now. They're playing, they feel like a lot like the same team, plus, give or take a guy. So for me, I have to look back and be like, if anybody's going to pull off some upsets, I got to put my money on the Blazers.
Put it on the Blazers. All right. Well, we got the last matchup of the Western Conference. 4th and 5th seed, we got Clippers, Mavericks. So, Jade, the Clippers subtly not subtly, pretty much kind of tanked at the end of the season. So they didn't have to play some of the harder teams. Do you think this is going to be worth it? / is this a dick move?
Well, I'll start with the second one, because regardless of anything else, yes, it's a dick move. It's also not a smart move, because then you give a team that has much lower expectations a chip to play with, and Luka Doncic definitely played game one with a chip on his shoulder. Like, that wasn't, like, if you're going to do it, I get the strategy. I don't like the strategy. I would never do it myself. I get it. Keep it in the locker room.
Yeah.
Like, that should, if you're smart, that's not public knowledge. You don't let the Mavs find out that you picked them because you're easier. Like, no, not a bright move. I did pick the Clippers in this series, though, based on playoff experience. When it comes down to it, I mean, Luka's got playoff experience from playing internationally, but the rest of the team doesn't really.
Yeah. I mean, they were the 7th seed last year.
Yeah,
so,
but
I mean, they got like, yeah, I was gonna say they got 6 games worth of playoff experience.
Right, and we're looking at a Clippers team that's got Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and Serge Ibaka, and like the list of people that have done it is,
Doc
the team.
Rivers.
Right, and they've quietly done a lot better this season. They don't have the drama, right, that they had last season. So I think there's a lot less chance of them having the same kind of playoffs this season as they did last season. They seem to have, worked some things out. We heard nothing out of the Clippers all season long. All of a sudden, after hearing something come out of that camp every week, basically for the entire season last season.
Didn't know which LA team was more annoying.
Sometimes no news is good news. And in situations like this, I think no news out of Clippers was good news. And I think they're going to be able to get it together.
I'm going to say the opposite. I don't know if it's because, again, I like that underdog narrative, and somehow the Mavs have become kind of the underdogs of this particular matchup. And in a way, like, in the season as well, because, they just weren't able to get that chemistry together. We didn't have a healthy Porzingis for really any amount of time. So I would love to see Luka go forward and get the chance to be in the second round this year. I don't think that they'll make it past the second round. If they do make it to that far, But I just think the Clippers, like, this is an experiment that just doesn't seem to fully work. You know, they were having a good time. They purposely tanked, which I do agree with Jade. I would not do that and then let it be known to anybody. I think that was really idiotic. Like, why would you purposely tell a team that you're, you know, choosing them because they're less? Like, that just, like, mentally gives them so much fuel.
And I mean, there's so much anecdotal evidence over sports.
Yeah.
That you shouldn't, like, I was just thinking about the NCAA football playoffs this year, because I'm watching that now because the boyfriend's into football. But, like, it wasn't the finals game, but I think it was one of the semifinals game. The coach of, I want to say, it was Clemson and Ohio State. Those were the teams. And one team said the other team didn't even deserve to be there. And the team that didn't deserve to be there stomped them. Like, just, you know, and that happens. Like, you can't tell people you ain't shit.
Right.
You know, grown men, professional athletes, and think nothing's going to come out of that.
So much fuel. So much fuel.
So, a lot of Luka talk that we've been having. Shay, does Luka have to continue having a borderline triple-double for the Mavs to keep this momentum that they've had going?
Quite possibly, because again, it's just like they're another team that just are kind of missing that one element. And even without having any of their big players like permanently out in the same way that the Nuggets do with Murray, it's just they've always been lacking that, right? We've talked about that over and over and over again. So
it's funny that you bring it up now, because I have to throw something by you guys, because
you're joining Mavericks? No, I'm just kidding.
Patrick and I were talking about Russell Westbrook.
Oh.
And Patrick asked me, what team do you pick for him to go to and win a title next year? And I said the Mavs.
I think that's an interesting pick. Now,
I like it.
If they do that, do they keep Porzingis?
Porzingis, man.
I think he still has to be a piece, but not as big as they're making him.
Right,
he can't. Like, if he's only going to be available 60% of games, he's a fourth option.
Right.
He can't be higher than fourth. Speaking of, he got fined for visiting a club on Sunday. $50,000 by the league. I just got that off Bleacher Report.
The Bleacher Report?
Yeah. So, you know, also showing poor judgment a little bit there, Kristaps, besides the fact that you're never available.
Well, he's already gotten into a fight before. Like, you know, he's kind of a goober. The insult of the day, the goober. Okay, so we got the Western Conference now. Now going East Coast. So first round series, we got 1-8. We got Sixers, Wiz. Shay, can the Wizards ride the high of the play-in that they've had for the rest of the series?
No. I really no.
Nah, fam. Nah.
Nah. Like, there's no point in even dissembling about it.
No,
it is
right.
what
it's
it
like
is.
The Sixers are a much better put together team. The Wizards, again, rely on like two people, and those two people are not consistent. I mean, again, I love Russ. He has my entire heart, but he is not dependable all the time.
It's the West Coast Lakers.
Yeah.
I mean, East Coast Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, they should be really good.
They got 2 star players, and then the rest of the team, it's like,
yeah, I don't even remember a lot of their names, and I feel really awful.
It's
like I do a little bit because I do watch some Wizards games, like even in regular season, because Russ was there. But it's like Rui.
I like Rui too.
I don't know. I just like it's not their year. The Sixers have been doing so well. We've talked about them. You know, we've talked about Embiid's time. We've talked about Ben Simmons. These two are guys that are going to probably get awarded most valuable, best defense. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, it's really hard for me to imagine any way that even if they gave 100% on that high from the play-in, even then I would probably doubt that the Wizards could pull it off.
They're just outmatched. They're just outmatched in this. And, it's a 1-8 matchup. That's what we expect.
Exactly.
Yep. I think this might be one of the more clean-cut ones. Series. Jade, who is more important for performing well for the 76ers, Ben Simmons or Tobias Harris? Like, Tobias had a great first game. But
that's interesting. I had a feeling you were not going to say Joel Embiid because that would have been too easy.
He's the MVP. He's an MVP candidate. Of course, he's going to be the most important.
Yeah,
but who's going to be the two?
Wow. I like the idea that they can. I like the idea that they can switch back and forth on who's the two.
Right.
I like the idea that if Simmons is having a rough night, Tobias seems to be ready to step up. I like the idea that, and vice versa. Like the best teams have that. The Raptors had that on their championship run. It was a different guy every night that had the game that, propelled everybody forward. And I think the way the Sixers are set up, I think it has to be interchangeable. I don't think it could be one or the other behind Embiid. I think they kind of need to have, Embiid as 1 and Harris and Simmons as 2A and B.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
I'm a huge Tobias Harris fan, so when I see him perform well, that first game was so great to see, and then I'm like, oh, you also dropped an album the other day because you look exactly like J. Cole. Which shout out to J. Cole playing in the African League right now. Which that's more of who we have a rapper in our league, not so much of a actual talent. He's not bad, but I mean, like, are you professional?
Right.
But
he's playing in a professional league.
I know, but that's like
we in North America have a different view of professional sports, I think, than a lot of the world. Because I dated this guy briefly 10 years ago from England who was like, yeah, I played professional soccer, and he did. But there are a lot of levels of professional soccer.
If you get paid, if you get any form of payment, that is technically professional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could be getting paid $25, a slice of pizza and a beer, and then be like, what up? I finally got my first contract.
I'm a professional athlete.
Yep.
Oh, speaking of professionals, the Nets, they're really professional, right? I don't know. We're going to start with the Celtics, though, because that's more interesting. Shay, with Jaylen Brown being gone, where can Jason Tatum get help? Are we going to be seeing it from Kemba Walker? Marcus Smart got to step up. Who else has got to be there for Tatum?
I think Smart is a more aggressive player, and he's more fun to watch when he's on. But I have always wanted Kemba Walker to turn that fire on because we know it's there. It just seems to be kind of dormant all the time.
He's too happy.
Do we know it's there? I definitely don't know that it's there.
He's too happy, and I love it.
It's there.
But he's just always got a good mood on, and I'm like, this is great, but where's the
I think if you got angry, it would come out. I don't know. Yeah. I won't lie. This has been the one series that I haven't watched any games of or cared about that much, only because I feel like it's very unlikely the Celtics are going to beat the Nets. Sorry guys.
The Celtics aren't beating the Nets. That's not happening.
That was my next one. Was just overall. No. Is this going to be the easiest cakewalk for the Nets until the second round?
This was one of my easiest matchups to pick in the first round. I didn't even have to think. The Celtics are not a complete team.
Overrated.
They were overrated last season when they beat the Raptors, and I know that sounds I'm such a homer, but I watched that series. I watched the Raptors play garbage basketball for 7 games, and it still took 7 games.
Right.
They looked terrible. It was painful. It was painful to watch, but it still took 7 games. And Jason Tatum has taken a stride. Who else on Boston has taken a step forward since last season? It's the same group of guys.
Right.
They need a mix-up in that team. I just say they should just fire Danny Ainge. That's my choice. Anything Celtics is just fire Ainge.
I mean, nobody stays relevant forever.
No, I mean the guy's been there for almost 15 years in that same position.
He needs to move on.
Yeah, that's just like the Nets are going to do with the Celtics. They're going to move on. We're going to move on to the 3rd and 6th seed, Bucks versus Heat. I don't care. This is my one that I don't care about too much. At least with the Nets, as much as I don't like them, they're fun to watch.
They are fun to watch.
It's like Miami's old big 3 with LeBron, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh. It's I hate it, but it's still fun to watch. It's good basketball. But so I'm going to ask this one to you, Jade. The Bucks are getting it done in both close games and then also in blowouts. Are we seeing a new playoff Bucks team?
I'm not convinced yet based on game 1. Based on game 1, 2-point game, overtime. Bam had a crap game offensively. Jimmy had a crap game offensively. And you still only won by 2 points in overtime. Here's my other thing. Free throws down the stretch in playoff games. There are no more important free throws than free throws down the stretch in close games in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And Giannis can't hit them.
No.
Not only can he not hit them, and it's funny, I've been saying this, I don't know if I said it on here or just off the air. I know, I say a lot of things. It's really hard to keep track. It's really, really hard to keep track. But I know for sure that I was playing 21, and I said, we was talking about Giannis while we were playing. I'm like, his free throw routine is too long. He gets in his head. That's why he misses. Because I watched him, and I watched him, and I watched him. And then, so it was already a problem because he's spending too much time. A free throw routine is supposed to be something that is consistent. It's the same every time. It should be quick. And it's just to get the shot up. It's too long. It's not the same every time. He doesn't dribble the ball the same amount of times every time. He doesn't do the same thing every time. How did you get to be an MVP basketball player in the NBA? Nobody taught you the purpose of a free throw routine and how it should look, how it should feel, what it's supposed to do for you.
He actually got the 10-second violation.
I saw it. And so when they watched the replay, I counted. And they didn't blow the whistle till 14 seconds.
I was going to say, they gave him time.
They gave him time. And I've heard some of, the NBA talking heads being like, you can't call that in a playoff game. Nobody calls that, blah, 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 blah. Listen, 14 seconds.
That's
a long time.
That's a lot of time.
It's a long time. And it's in the rules. It doesn't matter. The argument that if they're going to call it against him, they should call it against everyone. Yes, sure. But I bet you other people who are going over 10 seconds are 12,
at the
11 seconds. They're just, and when they blew the whistle, he was just about to shoot. So he wasn't even ready to release yet at 14 seconds. He was still bending it. He hadn't even started lifting from his bent knees to go up into his shot. So it could have been 17 seconds by the time the ball hit the rim. So that's a problem.
Yeah.
You can't do it. You can't do that. You can't be the guy, especially since he plays in the paint so much. You can't, and you're the guy on that team. That combination of things does not work, and he needs to get that crap figured out.
Because I blanked out. I remember now. Okay, because when I grew up playing basketball, my AAU days and stuff like that, my routine was dribble once, put it up. Don't even give myself a chance to change something. Just we're keeping it simple. One dribble, put it up. And yeah,
mine is 3 dribbles and then spin the ball. You spin the ball in your hand and then up.
Mine still is Richard Hamilton, where it's just dribble,
Up. Yeah.
and then he puts it up. But that face mask. Shay, so with this Miami Heat team, has not been really has been underperforming. That's the word I'm trying to find. Underperforming. Are we seeing the same Heat team that we saw in the bubble?
No. And unfortunately not. And I think because I wanted the Heat to win, I love Bam. I love playoff Bam. So I was really hoping to get some of that last year's kind of revenge, or at least them get into the second, maybe make it all the way to the Eastern Finals. But it's just, we're not seeing the same team. And that's really disappointing because I enjoyed watching them last year in the finals. And I wanted to kind of see them return, and hopefully not against a Lakers team. And again, not because I think that they would have a better chance against someone that's not the Lakers, but just because I'm tired of the Lakers going to the finals, or them being the ones that we talk about going to the finals. So it would be nice to see another team from the Western Conference go against such a fun team to watch like the Heat. Unfortunately, it's not looking likely. So,
well, I think it's important to keep in mind that yes, they've dropped 2, but they've dropped 2 in Milwaukee, and it's not a series till someone wins on the road.
No, and that is very true. That is very true. And it is Milwaukee.
There's time.
And Miami is a tough place to play.
And Spoelstra is a great coach.
And he knows what he's doing. So it's like, even with them having bad games, it's like, I don't know. Like, I still have a little bit of hope. It's just like, of course, with these 2 losses, that's 2 out of 4. So that's like kind of difficult to be like, oh yeah, the Heat have it in the bag. I don't want to.
Let's keep in mind that it wouldn't be the first time Milwaukee's gone up 2 and lost a series.
I was just about to say, y'all ever heard of
lost in straight games
Arterio?
After that? Also, no more wins after the first 2. So there's precedent for this.
No, that is
with
true.
the same core group and the same coach.
Sadly.
Well, speaking of core groups and old coaches, how about some new coaches and a bunch of new players on both teams? Knicks and Hawks. This is my series that I have been loving so much. Jade and I, we were talking about it a little bit beforehand. We just thought the teams matched up so well, down to the coaching with Nate McMillan and Tom Thibodeau right now with it.
Yeah.
Shay, besides Julius Randle, which shout out to him for winning Most Improved Player. Shout out to him with that. Who on New York needs to step up?
That's a good question.
Like Barrett's been there at times with that.
That was the first one that came to mind, but
like also Emmanuel Quickly. I mean, that's kind of asking a lot though from a rookie.
Right. That's, I think, the hardest thing is they do have a lot of like
Derrick Rose.
I'm gonna go ahead and say Derrick Rose only because like he is kind of the most veteran presence on that team. And this is a team that the franchise hasn't made it to the playoffs in how long? So, and they're kind of like a ragamuffin group of guys where you do have Julius Randle, Most Improved. That's great, but that also means that your prior seasons have not been as strong, as consistent. So you're now showing that consistency.
His situation, he was locked in some bad situations.
Exactly. And the Knicks have so much against them. They're kind of like the sweet story, right? But
who would think that the New York team is the sweet story?
Well, I wouldn't think that the Knicks would be in the playoffs for the next 10 years, to be honest. If anyone had asked me at the beginning of the season, I probably would have been like, no. Like, just because we kind of discounted them for so long, it's like, why are we talking about the Knicks? Like,
and they didn't squeak into the playoffs. They ended up at the 4th seed. Like,
yeah, exactly. Solid placement.
Yeah.
Solid placement. They've been pretty, they earned their spot too. Again, it's not like they were kind of hovering at like a 6-7. For a while. Like, no, they got that solid placement. And I think what Thibodeau's done really well with the team. this season is really paying off, as well as, and I think that probably has something to do with Julius Randle being able to come into his own. I really love the Hawks team. I have been pretty vocal about that since the beginning of the season. And so I was happy to see how well Trae Young was playing. I was happy to see him under pressure playing really nicely. So I'm not going to lie that, like, yeah, the Knicks is a sweet story that they made it to the playoffs, but I really don't want them to go to the second round because I want to see more of that Hawks basketball.
I mean, anybody that can silence the MSG crowd.
Oh, exactly.
Like that.
I love the MSG crowd, but when it goes silent, that's my favorite.
Like, I got goosebumps. When he did that. I was like, damn.
I could not believe it. That was so good.
So speaking of the Hawks and silencing the crowd, so Shay, I already know that you, of course, loved Trae Young's first playoff game performance.
Beautiful, yeah.
Jade, how about you? Were you impressed with game one of Trae Young's playoff experience?
I mean, it's hard not to be impressed. And he's another one of those guys, like we talked about John Morant before, that just knows he belongs there. And I get that same kind of thing from Trae Young. Like, he knows who he is. He knows what he's capable of. He knows that he deserves to be there. And he backs it up. It's such a good game. It's such a good matchup, but I don't think anybody on the Knicks has that X factor, and I think that might be the difference in the series if it goes towards the Hawks. I did take the Knicks in the series, so that will be interesting. But that it has more to do with the fact that they've got, Derrick Rose there and Thibodeau as the coach. I think that steadiness of that experience might come through to help them. Whereas, Randall's been around for a bit, but he's never had a season like this before. He's never done a playoffs like this before, right, where he was the guy. And I think that pressure on him was pretty obvious after that first game.
Yeah.
Because he has not been the Julius Randle that we've become accustomed to watching throughout the season. And I remember looking at it like, that's a lot of pressure to be the guy in New York when they finally become relevant again.
But he loves it, which is great.
It's good, but he has to be able to love it and perform. And I didn't see those two things come together in game one.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Good point.
A little side note with Derrick Rose. Once they got him, they went at least at one point 24-11. So
wow.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess Derrick Rose a whole lot important than I was giving him credit for. Which
it's because he's quiet about it now.
Oh gosh, he's in total mentor mode.
He does what he needs to do. He gets it done. But if you looked at his what points did he average this season? I'm going to look it up because to hear those numbers about how the team played with and without him, let me see. He averaged 14 points in New York,
and then 4 assists.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
14. Yeah, 14 and 4.
15's a lot of points to lose if he's not available, on top of that steadiness he brings and the mentoring and the experience.
So good for him. Like, they just got, usually I don't like the Knicks, but they just got players that I like right now, so I'm just pulling for them.
Well, and when I was watching that game, I was like, not only are the Knicks good, but this is an East Coast basketball team. The way they play defense, this is a team that an East Coast basketball fan deserves. So I can see why Knicks fans are so thrilled. Not only are they good, but they're the kind of team that New Yorkers appreciate.
Well, and I love that it's happening in the same season where Brooklyn brought in 3 superstars, right? And a lot of before I left Brooklyn, there was so many people that were like, well, I guess I'll watch Brooklyn this year, even though I know that they are lifelong Knicks fans. But it just, there was a certain hope that was lost at the beginning of the season. So it's kind of ironic that the same year that the Nets were like, we're going to become the New York team, the Knicks were like, no, we're on our way
Not
back.
so fast. Not so fast.
Like, you guys may be good, but because we're good, we're still New York's team.
Exactly.
And I mean, and New York is a team, again, when it comes down to the way teams work and the way teams are built, is a team that I will respect more.
Yeah.
Because they managed to do it, even though they're New York. Nobody wants to play in New York.
No one wants to be a Knick anymore.
Right.
Maybe now. I mean,
yeah.
The thing about it being New York is it's not going to take a lot to change that. And I think what they've done now is probably going to be enough. But to get there, they had to be that team nobody wanted to play for. They couldn't get a free agent. They couldn't get anybody to stay.
Mm-hmm.
And they found all of these bits and pieces that a season ago did not make sense as a roster.
Exactly.
Nope.
And made a couple more tweaks to the roster and the coach, and all of a sudden, magic.
Yeah, and bringing Tibbs in was a big part of that.
Yeah, which is, even as a Timberwolves fan, I've come to the conclusion I didn't like him as a Timberwolves coach, but I will acknowledge his brilliant mind for basketball. And as a Knicks coach, I think he works out perfectly for that franchise. Because you have to have some hard skin for that franchise.
I hope he ends up getting Coach of the Year. I think he deserves it more than Monty Williams.
I think I can go with that too.
I still might be leaning towards Monty. But anywho, so got the breakdown for both the conferences in the first round series. Now let's hopefully see if our takes hold true for it, or who is going to be right between these two, since we've actually had some disagreements for once in this podcast.
Right? We finally disagree.
Yeah, it doesn't almost take a year and a half to get it to go. Yeah, we got it. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah.
It's only been a year. It's only been a year. We met Shay during the bubble.
True. Okay, well, now it's time for Fast Break, the time where I ask 3 questions for Shay and Jade that they have no prior knowledge to, and I want to see if they can figure out if they're right or not. So first one, this one's actually just a comparison. Luka and Trae are going to be compared. Trae Young are going to be compared for pretty much the rest of their career because it was just 1A, 1B for them. So, who's going to be more successful in this playoff experience, Trae Young or Luka, Jade?
Oh, that's hard because there's also some. They're not on the same level. Their teams aren't on the same level.
Right.
It's not Luka's first playoffs in the NBA. It is. So, like, what success is, I think, is different for both of those teams. I think being in the playoffs is success for Atlanta compared to where they've been. Mm-hmm. And if they happen to pull out a win in a series, that's like bonus.
Yeah.
That's like, we did something right. We're going to build on it next year. I think for the Mavs, because they've been a team, they've been where the Hawks are for a bunch of seasons now, that team on the cusp that you think is, next season they're going to take another step and then they don't. Or no, next season they're still missing that piece. So I think since the Mavs, I think, are going to go out to the Clippers in the first round, I got to give it to Trae and the Hawks.
Ooh,
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, I was gonna say because Jade likes Luka, like that little.
Yeah, I like Luka. I love the Mavs, but having competition about basketball with Patrick is helping my objectivity a lot because I want to beat him.
That's fair. That is fair. Shay, how about you? Who's gonna have? Are you gonna have your Trae Young bias, or is Luka's smile gonna charm you?
Well, I mean, going off of what Jade said, I think when I think of the idea of success or having these memorable moments, I think Game 1 with the Knicks was already such a memorable moment for Trae. I mean, and this might be me having blinders on because being an Oklahoma City fan, but it reminded me very much. No, listen. I didn't even make my point, so now I'll make it.
I know.
But it reminded me very similarly of that buzzer beater of Damian Lillard against Oklahoma City that is like still tattooed on everyone's mind. If again, Oklahoma City's mind. So that's kind of what it reminded me of, right? Like these memorable finishes. And I mean, don't get me wrong, that could totally change if all of a sudden they lose the next 3 games. The Knicks are so much better. Somehow the Mavs make it, like there's always that kind of thing. But I really think that the way that Trey showed up in that game 1 is only going to propel him forward in the next couple of games. And we're going to get more moments like this. So that's like probably the series I'm most excited about right now, even with like Denver being the team that I wanted to make it all the way. But I really like this Hawks team. And
how weird is that all 3 of us, our favorite series is the one the Knicks are in?
Right?
Who could have called that?
Right?
So weird.
Me especially with Tom Thibodeau in the mix.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, next question. Shay. Which shooting guard has the most assists combined between season and playoffs?
This year?
Career.
Oh, God. Career. Now I got to think about who's technically a shooting guard.
Currently playing, right?
No.
Oh, ever?
Ever?
Well, like that's a very large haystack, Taylor.
It's within the past 20 years.
Shooting guards.
Think of all-time greats shooting guards.
Larry Bird.
That's a small forward, but
yeah, that's why I'm really bad with positions.
Also, 20 years, girl. He played in the 80s.
I know.
In the past 20 years.
But when I think of like really good shooting, like anyway, I don't know. Why is this question so hard? I feel like I'm in a spotlight.
I honestly, once I tell you the answer, you guys are gonna be kind of mad. I'm pretty sure.
It's gonna be obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm really actually surprised that you guys are blanking this badly on it. But okay.
I'm like, who's a shooting guard? Who makes points? Who?
But this is assists. This isn't points. This is assists.
Oh, assists.
Yes, this is who has, when it comes to both playoffs and season put together. Regular season put together.
Russell Westbrook.
Okay, that's a point guard.
Say,
I know. That's like, I don't.
I'm gonna say Reggie.
Reggie Miller.
Yeah.
All right, I'll just go with your Russell Westbrook. Kobe Bryant, you guys.
Okay, I do feel like an idiot.
I mean, I don't think of assists when I think of Kobe.
No,
like, you think Kobe, you think points.
That's why I said Russell, is because I was like assists.
Well, that's why I thought with like a slight twist, but like, anywho, okay, the last one is going to be a Miami matchup lineup.
Okay.
Oh.
And it's going to be in prime. So Team A is Mario Chalmers, Oladipo, LeBron James, Chris Bosh, and Bam.
Oh.
Versus Team B, which is Goran Dragic, Dwayne Wade, Jimmy Butler, Shane Battier, who is a multiple first team defense, and then Alonzo Mourning, multiple All-Star, multiple Defensive Player of the Year, Hall of Famer.
Ooh. I'm taking Team B.
I'm taking Team A.
You're gonna take Team
I'm taking Team B. When you said, I was on the fence until you said Alonzo Mourning, because I remember watching Alonzo Mourning play.
He beat Bam up. He would
eat him for dinner. Like, it would not be close.
Alonzo Mourning was one of the few guys that Shaq is like, okay, like I could still play against him, but he was a real pain in my butt.
Right, exactly.
And
maybe in a few years when Bam's got some more experience and he's more seasoned, because I don't think Bam's hit his prime yet. Like,
I hope not.
I don't think he's peaked yet.
Oh, far from it.
But knowing where he is now, that's the matchup to me that's like would be the difference maker.
And especially Miami, Alonzo Mourning. Like, this is a guy, like when he was there before he had his kidney transplant, he was MVP candidate as well as Defensive Player of the Year winner. So
he was a beast.
I love Alonzo Mourning. One of my favorites, all-time favorites. Well, today's been fun. Got actually a lot meatier of an episode than I thought we were going to do. So there's playoff basketball that we got to watch right now.
Yep.
So,
Right now.
yeah. So, and I have to eat as well. So,
Same.
see you guys
Same.
later. Hardcourt Hunnies, we're out with the week. Bye.
Yeah.